Many thanks for choosing us. This afternoon, Medina MP Francis Sosu is a wanted man. The police has received the blessing of the Carnation District Court to arrest and detain the MP after he failed to show in court for the third time. He's accused of destroying public property and unlawfully blocking public road. He granted us an interview last week where he said he feels targeted by the state for his activism.
We are doing politics and we cannot undermine the impact of what we're doing. There have been very major things in this country, and I've been a very huge and loud voice on them. I recall when, for example, the Ghana Bar president once upon a time had an issue. I was one of the voices that said he should resign. When the Chief Justice was implicated in $5 million bribery allegation before the General Legal Council, I was one of the people who was insisting that he should resign. And I made very, what I would call very strong statements, which I know that people in power would definitely not be happy with those statements. And then when issues were going out of hand, I was part of people who are introducing bills to remove CJ from the General Legal Council, remove some of the senior judges from the General Legal Council. So these are not things that we should take lightly. And many people will not feel will not feel so great about these things. I believe it can be a good grounds for people to target me, and I will not be surprised if I'm targeted for harm or any of those things. Honestly, I felt very insecure by the things the police did. Yes, I felt my security had been compromised to the extent that even when the matter before the Parliament committee, they could even go ahead and then interdict my personal bodyguard. Clearly, you've taken away my security. And you know...
So that bodyguard is still not with you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm supposed to be entitled to a police bodyguard, but once you've interdicted him, it means that he cannot work. So for me, it is not appropriate.
But you have a replacement?
I don't have a replacement. And you don't just get replacements for those. You need to be sure of who is coming and so on and so forth, because...
So there was a replacement, but you were not sure of the security?
I don't have a replacement.
The police administration has not made any effort to replace?
Not at all. And it means that it will take a personal effort to either get a personal, security until such a time that this whole saga is resolved. Shouldn't government be asking a question? Why would a member of parliament be the one to lead demonstration together with his people? Why would government not asking the question? So where is the contractor who had signed 11.5 million Ghana cedis contract and never showed up on the road for over 1 year? Shouldn't government be asking questions? Who gave the contract? Why are you not supervising? Why is the person not on the road? Why? So what is the sanction regime for people who don't do their job? Why should it take the intervention of a member of parliament to the extent of going to demonstration before a contractor suddenly shows up and starts grading road? So for me, it's very unfortunate, but I'm hoping that the Human Rights Court will have the opportunity, seized with all the facts of this case, and will vindicate my right to freely participate in demonstrations and to freely demonstrate, my right not to be subjected to unlawful arrest, my right not to be subjected to malicious prosecution, my right to freedom of expression, my right to safety as an individual. I believe that these are rights that are being violated as a result of the actions of the police.
The MP was supposed to show up in court this morning, but his lawyers say he was attending to parliamentary business, a reason they had advanced on the 2 previous occasions. He failed to show up. Magistrate Oheneba Kufuor issued the warrant for arrest of the MP, saying there's too much deception in the system. Mr. Sosu's lawyers say they will seek to set this aside. Listen to Victor Adaudu.
It's open knowledge, and we told the court that's why he can't come. He's on a national duty, so he can't come. The court says that, the prosecution says that if he doesn't come, we've demonstrated we don't want him. That's all. He's ready to fight his court, and we will fight the court. But exercising a right that the law grants you by filing a motion and others does not stop the court from saying that we cannot exercise that right. So We will come back to this court. He's issued a temper. We will advise ourselves. We will come back to the court. If it is true that he's in the parliamentary committee or he's not gone for the parliamentary committee, I think it is best for the public to judge whether he went there or he didn't go there. Right. I have told the court what I know, and I have integrity, I have credibility, and I'm sure the Honorable Sosu would love to have been here, but because of the duty in Parliament and the position as the deputy ranking, he could not come.
Let's stick with Parliament, because this afternoon there's intense lobbying ahead of a possible showdown in that house on Tuesday, as the two sides maintain their stance on what happened in Parliament last Friday. While the majority accused the minority of unconstitutionally rejecting the 2022 budget, the minority is calling for dialogue to resolve the current standoff, threatening it will resist any attempt by the finance minister to relay the budget in its current form. This afternoon, JoyNews is learning of serious engagement between leaders of the majority and minority to reach consensus. This definitely must happen, especially because government needs the approval of the budget to spend. If you missed last Friday's showdown in Parliament, this is how it unfolded.
Walk out of this chamber. Nothing will come. What do you think you are? Nothing of what I say. Honorable members,
The NDC, in a statement signed by its leader, Haruna Idris, wants government to suspend the electronic transaction levy, withdraw the Ejapa Minerals royalties deal, provide for the tidal waves disaster, as well as reward the government of Ake oil deal and review of benchmark values for imports. Listen to the majority leader, Seche Mensah-Bonsu, who says the majority will tomorrow move a motion for a rescission to reverse the rejection of the budget.
Be that as it may, he went ahead, did what he did in absence because we were not in the chamber. And then went ahead to state that the motion on the budget, as moved by the Minister of Finance on Wednesday, the 17th of November, is lost. That whole procedure was unconstitutional. As far as we are concerned, it's null and void. There's no binding effect on anybody. Now, we say so because, and so the motion on the budget, as far as we are concerned, has not been pronounced on by Parliament. It's still standing in the name of the Minister for Finance. And in the fullness of time, a properly constituted House, not one presided over by the Right Honourable Speaker, will make the decision. Now, out of mischief, the Speaker quoted Article 102 of the Constitution, that, and I quote, a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all members of Parliament. He was right. But the quorum is for the transaction of normal business. Maybe statements are being made, no decision is being taken. So that one, that quoted number of 1/3, can listen to it. When it comes to decision making, it is not Article 102 that applies. It's Article 104 that comes into play. You recollect that yesterday, the minority leader signaled that they are going to invoke Article 104. It was not for nothing. We thought the Speaker knows the fundamentals of the Constitution.
He's ignorant.
Now, what happened today involved a decision of the House. In that case, it is not Article 102. It is Article 104 plus 1. And I read, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament, including this one, shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all members of Parliament present. The number that the Speaker quoted reflected the entirety of the membership of the minority caucus in Parliament. But assuming that is right, because you have cause to believe that at least 2 of them were not in the chamber.
The constitutionality or otherwise of Parliament's decision last Friday rejecting the budget is splitting heads. At the center of the controversy is the dictates of Article 104, which says any such decision must be taken with more than half of MPs. But the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, says Parliament acted within the confines of the law. His chief whip, Muntaka Mubarak, is blaming the majority leader, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, for failing to lead his side.
I mean, it's just too unfortunate. I overheard the majority leader of Oseche Mensah Bonsu saying that the Speaker should bow his head in shame. In essence, it is, if anybody has to bow his head in shame, it is he, because he has become a spent layer and has outlived his usefulness as a leader. Because look, how do you have 137 members plus an independent member who has chosen to do business with you? And you knew from the day the debate started that everything, the posture, everything points to the fact that the minority were going to oppose this thing. And then the day came, you didn't have your number. In fact, on Tuesday, before the Friday, he claims to have intercepted the message that I sent to my caucus, the trail line whip. And he was arrogantly showing to others, look, he has given his people trail line whip. Yes, but to what end did he use it? He didn't. If we in opposition, with very little resources, we could marshal all our 137, and you with government behind you, you couldn't marshal your forces. Who are you blaming? You should rather blame yourself. You had all your 138 in the chamber. We will not be where we are. You simply vote.
Let's have a conversation on what kind of engagement should be going on right now ahead of tomorrow's proceedings. Dr. Rashid Dramani is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. I'm grateful, Dr. Dramani, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
So first, what's your reading of what happened in Parliament last Friday?
Well, Aisha, my reading of what happened in Parliament, it brought memories of what happened on the night of January 6 to January 7. I mean, the kind of confusion that we saw that characterized the election of the Speaker, if you like, the mayhem and the budget, the ballot snatching and so on. What we saw was almost characteristic of that. And it only just tells you that, the stakes are very high. The stakes were high on that day, and the stakes are very high even on Friday of last week. And for me, right from day one, which was January 7th, I kept saying, I think even on this your network, that it was important that the two sides found a way, at least to build bridges and to build consensus at all times. Let's be realistic about this. There is no way that any one of the parties can think that it's business as usual, as they used to have it when they both had majorities in Parliament. I mean, this eighth Parliament is different. And I think the earlier the two sides began to realize that and really imbibe that and take into account the implications of that, which is they need to build bridges. I think the better for both of them in terms of their fortunes going forward. And then I think the better it is going to be for us, the ordinary people who are at the end of the day, the recipients of whatever decisions that they take. Look, the finance minister prayed on Parliament, prayed on the Speaker on that day to allow some compromise, some consensus, and some discussion. I mean, that was a good thing. And that was something that I thought should have been done way, way before the day that the votes were going to be counted. You know, you have to engage. Right from the day that the budget was read, I think the minority raised concerns. And knowing the character of this Parliament and knowing the numbers, I would have thought that right from that day, the majority side and the minister would start engaging the MPs, particularly from the other side. Because you see, they learned their lessons. I'm talking about the NDC. When it came to issues about the appointment of ministers, they said one thing to the media and the public, and then they went and did something else. And they took a lot of passion, if you like, from their base, as well as from ordinary Ghanaians. Because they say, you say one thing and then you go and act in another way. And people imputed all kinds of motives. Going into this, I believe they learned their lessons. So when they started saying, we are going to reject this budget, or we don't agree with A, B, C, D, I would have thought that the other side would have taken it seriously, particularly given the character of this Parliament. It's not too late. At the end of the day, the NDC is not going to get all the things that they are asking for. The minister is not going to get all the things that are in the budget. Somehow, I think they have to find a way to come to the middle. Some giving and some taking would have to happen in order for us to get this budget passed. I mean, if people are digging in their positions and you know, talking about legalities and so on, I think that this is a time for them to put their practical caps and realize that, look, we have to be pragmatic here. And I'm talking about, both sides, particularly a message to the majority side.
Indeed, the minority had warned of further resistance if the budget comes back in its current form. Thankfully, this afternoon, we are hearing of serious engagement between the majority and minority. I mean, for you, what should be the thrust of this engagement?
Well, I think the thrust of the engagement, Aisha, should be, look, the finance minister is the one who has the bigger picture, who knows, you know, what our financial situation is. And that is why, you know, in most countries, sometimes there's often a resistance to give Parliament a much bigger role when it comes to budget making, because there's something we call the common pool problem. Because every MP would like to see his constituency in the budget. In the end, the expenditure balloons, and then the revenues cannot accommodate that. The finance minister knows, you know, what is in the envelope in terms of what our expenditure is and what kind of revenues we need. Within this envelope, there is a need for some conversation to see, okay, the minority is making some demands in terms of taking e-levy out. That is something that the finance minister has counted as revenue and other policy measures. If we take this, what would that mean for our fiscal situation? So they will have to have the conversation. At the same time, they are also making some demands about Qatar defense, sea defense wall, and about Japan and so on. So maybe in the end, they might get one or two of their demands taken into account. And the minister might also have to know that he might have to give up some of the things that are in the policy statements.
So, Dr. Dramani, I agree with the point you just made, but so the MPs will return to Parliament definitely tomorrow on this one. You've always called for consensus at the moment Parliament got to the state of an almost hung Parliament, and you've just talked about consensus right now. What would you want to see tomorrow as far as approval of the budget 2022 is concerned?
Well, I shall want to all see the budget approved because, you see, not approving the budget and getting the country into some kind of gridlock has very, very serious implications, particularly for the ordinary person. You know, there are a number of people who live by the day, and I think they rely on the government services and so on. In some countries like the US, we've seen governments shutting down because the budget has not been passed. And we've seen even the implications for people who live on the margins. So whatever it is, I would like to see at the end of the day, both sides, taking a step into the middle and making sure that there is some giving and some taking. The NDC can continue to push forward its demands, but there's also a limit. If it is not careful and then we get into the arena of government shutting down and so on, people are going to turn around to start blaming the NDC for their plight. So their effort at holding the government to account might have the kind of opposite effect, if you like, of endearing them to the Ghanaian electorate and for us to see them as a credible government in waiting. So there is a limit to how much they can push in terms of their demands. They must be ready to give up some of the demands, of course, making sure that they prioritize what their demands are. And if it comes to dropping some of them, I think they should be ready to do that. And the other side should also be ready to concede and say that, look, there are certain things that we need to give up, maybe, and then wait another day. There's going to be other budgets in the years to come.
I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Rashid Dramani is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. We're still live on The Pulse. And remember, we're streaming live on YouTube, and all our social media handles is on JoyNews on TV. My personal handle on Twitter is @Nana Aisha. You can also tweet at us on the hashtag The Pulse. We're taking a break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to The Pulse. Let's get down to COVID-19. Did you know that between the year 20... All right, so we'll talk about COVID-19 because there's a new variant, the Omicron variant, and the Ghana Health Service is descending heavily on vaccination and asking people to do that, because if you don't, you won't be able to visit the places that you love to go this December. We'll be talking to the Ghana Health Service more on how this will happen and how they intend to enforce this. Dr. Da Costa will be speaking to me as Ghana tries to revamp and ask a lot of people to vaccinate. And remember, we have a target of 20 million of Ghanaians who are supposed to be vaccinated. Now, we're looking at this new restrictions, and Dr. Kuma Boaji is the director of the Ghana Health Service. Listen to him.
These are the proposed mandates which we are going to pursue. With the increasing availability of vaccines and reasonable quantity in the pipeline, we are declaring December as the month for vaccination, or let's say vaccination for Christmas. So December is going to be declared as the month of vaccination, and it will be launched by the Honorable Minister on 30th of November 2021, that's Tuesday coming. These mandates, which I'm going to announce, will be applicable in January 2023 as specific groups and manners as soon as, and this mandate become effective as soon as the campaign is over. We have them in two sections. They are going to have proposed groups that will be covered under the mandate and the venues. We are looking at all the three arms of government. All health workers have been given the opportunity to vaccinate, and they stay in a very strategic position that either they can share among themselves or give to their patients. So that's why we prioritize that. And remember, we are talking about these are the people who have been prioritized at the beginning, even when we had very few vaccines. And so we expect that. All security personnel will be covered. They should be vaccinated. All staff and students in secondary and tertiary schools should be vaccinated. And so secondary schools are being given the opportunity. Started last week, Friday, from 27th, almost all regions are doing vaccination of Pfizer in schools. And so in January, you should be fully vaccinated before you come back to school. All workers in government institutions and parastatals, all commercial drivers and their mates are expected to be vaccinated at the end of that. That's where they're commanded to cover them. There are areas where the mandate to cover, that will be a venue. And this venue for now includes nightclubs, beaches, sports stadium, and restaurants for indoor dining. And these are areas that it will mean that you need to be vaccinated before you can go into these venues, and that will be enforced.
He said proof of vaccination would also be needed for nightclubs, beaches, sports stadiums, and restaurants. Only 21% of the targeted population have received the first dose, while 7% are fully vaccinated. Health Ministry data showed Ghana has to date recorded 131,083 coronavirus cases and 1,220 deaths. Kuma Boaji said the Health Ministry hopes to double daily vaccinations from over 142,000 currently as the country braces for a potential surge in cases after the holiday. This afternoon, we have a conversation with leader of the COVID-19 risk communication team in Ghana, Dr. Aboagye Da Costa, who's also director of health promotion at the Ghana Health Service. Dr. Da Costa, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. Hello, Dr. Da Costa. Kindly unmute for me so we can have a conversation.
Good afternoon, sir.
Great. So I need you to tell us about the mandatory vaccination. What exactly, what does it mean? How much vaccine is available?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me say good afternoon to all Ghanaians as well. I think as a country, since we started the pandemic, we've done a lot. And in the midst of vaccine scarcity, supply chain challenges, I must say that the government and the president, through many efforts, have been able to brought in country about 12.3 million of the vaccines. Just last week, we received about 4 million. Now, we from the ministry and the Ghana Health Service believe that the exercise is going on well, but it's also time for us to encourage Ghanaians to obviously take the vaccines that we have, because we are all not safe until we are all vaccinated. Now that we have enough vaccines for many people, we are starting the second phase where we are rolling out to the general population. So within the service, what we are doing is we are working through our decentralized system where our regional health directorates and the district health directorates do have the vaccines now. Now, they have set up centers within all our health facilities. But what we are also doing is we are placing people with the vaccines. So, for example, in churches, we are giving to people who attend churches, sports stadiums. We are giving to people in various locations. So, we believe that it is time for us to alert Ghanaians that within the month of December, at least 4 weeks window, everyone should be vaccinated. Now, I talked about our target is to bring in about 20 million by the close of the year. We have brought in about 12.3 million. I know that there are about 7.4 and additional doses in the pipeline. So I can round it up to about 8-point-something million in the pipeline. So we believe that we'll be able to get that 20 million doses in country by the end of December. Now we need the cooperation of the Ghanaian people. This is why we are declaring the month of December as the vaccination month, to offer everyone opportunity to vaccinate. Now, when this campaign ends, then people wouldn't be able to go to certain places have they not been vaccinated, or they may have to show PCR tests before they are able to go to those places. And we've started serious engagements. The health minister on Wednesday, in fact, the director general said Tuesday, but it will be on Wednesday. We will obviously launch this vaccination month to re-emphasize what we said at the press conference, and also to make it clear which groups are going to be affected. Bear in mind, initially, when we started this vaccination, we gave priority to some groups like health workers, the elderly, the security officials, the executive, all the three arms of government. So we believe that in setting up this mandate, we are proposing that certain groups will have to show vaccination certificate before they enter certain venues like workplaces, sports stadia, restaurants, and beaches. So this is the exercise that we'll continue to do until it kicks in, the mandates kicks in January. But I must say that we'll do this within the legal framework of Ghana by using, obviously, the president still chairs the COVID task force. So consultations are ongoing in what's supposed to be in place before the 4-week window.
Dr. Da Costa, I'm curious to know how you intend to actually enforce these new restrictions, especially with the difficulties we've had with similar restrictions in the first, second, third waves of the COVID-19. In this particular one, I find nurses, I find policemen. One of the questions they will ask you is, if a policeman refuses to vaccinate, I mean, who checks the policeman? I mean, how is the collaboration like?
Okay, thank you. So let me say that the security forces, their heads are part of the COVID-19 task force, and we decide with them. And in the enforcement of these restrictions, the police, the security agencies are going to play active role in this. Heads of institutions are also going to play active role in this. For example, if we are saying that I'm using the health sector as an example, we are saying that for our health workers, if you are not vaccinated, you cannot come to work. Yes, you have obviously heads of the various institutions from the region to the district to the health facilities, and we will be checking this. Now, let me say that by technology, it's easy to verify because the certificates do have QR code. So all you have to do is for the person checking to scan, and it will scan the QR code. It will lead you to our website, and all your information, everything will be available for us to know if you're vaccinated or not. In the absence of that, then you may have to show a PCR test before you are allowed to the workplace. So we'll be working with, for example, the Public Services Commission. That's why I said that all legal means within the framework will be considered so that people's rights are also respected.
All right, so we'll be getting reactions, especially from drivers, and the GPRTU will be joining us for this conversation shortly. But I also need to also find out from you, the people who fail to take advantage of this period, what happens to them?
We'll still, the exercise will still be ongoing from January. So you will be refusing entry into such places. So that's why it will be no vaccination, no entry. Then we'll direct you to where you can get your vaccination, to go and vaccinate before you come for the intended program that you want to attend.
Share with me your execution plan, Dr. Da Costa.
Yes, so this is why we've given 4 weeks windows. Like I said, the consultations are still ongoing. We really want to make sure that we get this right. So we are engaging, for example, we'll be engaging the traditional leaders, commercial drivers, health workers union. A lot of stakeholder engagement programs have actually occurred, but some will still be ongoing. We will make sure that we obviously consult broadly before the enforcement of this by the 1st of January or by the end of this exercise. And it is the reason why we have given 4 weeks window. Because bear in mind, I said in my earlier submission that we've given such people, for example, priority to vaccinate, like the executive, all the 3 arms of government, all the health workers, all security personnel. There wouldn't be any excuse for not vaccinating. And we are also providing alternative. For example, without your vaccination, you must show proof of the test that you've done for us to keep, in the health sector, for us to keep yourself safe, keep our patients safe, and keep the staff safe as well.
For Dr. Boaji Da Costa, he's Director of Health Promotions at the Ghana Health Service. This is something we'll be monitoring and see how successful, especially considering how, the last few similar restrictions went throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. But the the Ghana Medical Association has also this afternoon issued a statement with regards to yellow fever and COVID-19 situation in Ghana, and I'll read excerpts of the statement for you. It says that the Ghana Medical Association have been involved with the management and containment of efforts of the double bedding of yellow fever outbreak and COVID-19 pandemic, and do hereby state as follows. Our country is currently managing an outbreak of yellow fever. The outbreak, which was first detected in Savannah region, has since spread to 8 regions, and unfortunately 40 persons have died. We express our deepest condolence to those who have lost their loved ones. The Ministry of Health has put in adequate measures to contain the situation with appropriate case definition, case management, and vaccination measures. We urge all persons in Ghana, especially those in affected areas, to cooperate with the ongoing vaccination exercise and report any suspected causes and cases to the nearest health facility for appropriate diagnosis and management. And we commend the tremendous efforts of our public health physicians and all health workers. With regards to COVID-19 pandemic, it has been gratifying to note downward trend of active cases of COVID-19 in Ghana that saw us record 0 new cases on some days in the past few weeks, and we commend all stakeholders. We, however, note with grave concern the discovery of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 in some countries in the world, with several mutations noted on the spike protein of this mutant strains. It's still unknown if this new strain may evade immunity and acquired from past infection or vaccination. Data available from Southern Africa shows that the Gauteng province of this variant is higher than that of the Delta variant. RO of 1.47. This means this new variant may be potentially more infectious than even the Delta variant. In the light of the discovery of the Omicron variant and with the impending festive season in Ghana, The Ghana Medical Association called for improved efforts to prevent the nation from entering into a fourth wave. To achieve this, we encourage all Ghanaians to avail themselves of vaccination against COVID-19. And it's signed by Dr. Frank Sribo, who is president, and Dr. Titus Bayo, who is general secretary. Hopefully, we'll be getting one of them on the line to speak to the statement and also tell us what we need to know and what we need to do as we approach the festive season. Now, did you know that between the year 2016 and 2018, Ghana lost over $200 million to recorded cybercrime cases? The Ghana Police Service says more than half of these reported cases are linked to cyber fraud. So this afternoon, we ask, how safe is our cyberspace, especially at a time when government is pushing a digitalization agenda and there's a growing demand for internet connectivity? Let's have a conversation this afternoon. Joining me to have this is Head of Capacity Building and Awareness Creation at the Cybersecurity Authority, Alex Opong. He joins us via Zoom. And also right here in the studio is data protection expert Sylvia Pia, who's CEO of Information Governance Solutions, a data protection firm. Good to see you, Sylvia. And good to see you. Good to have you, Alex, on the other side.
Good afternoon and good. It's great to be here.
Great.
Hello, Sylvia.
Hello, Alex. Sure. So let's go straight away. And I want to put the question directly to you, Mr. Opong. How safe is our cyberspace?
Kevin. Right. So as you've rightly stated, there are a number of digitalized initiatives that have been put through by the government. And the good thing about technology and digitalization in particular is it essentially provides some kind of equal playing field for all people who use it. So we all have the same access to the kind of resources that the internet provides. We all will be able to use things efficiently in terms of getting the best out of the internet, in terms of the different services that the internet provides and the service providers that provide those services. But in terms of the safety, if you've noticed, over the years, I mean, it's good that you quoted those stats. You would have found out that way back when those stats started coming out around 2017, Ghana initially started off by putting into place the cybersecurity strategy and policy. As the years have gone by, we have had, basically, knowing the importance of how cyber is going to be related to everyday life and to help with the well-being of individuals within any organization and also the advancement of any country. We also looked at basically making sure that we had some kind of, we had a secure and resilient digital ecosystem within Ghana. And therefore you found out that then later on the National Cybersecurity Center was set up. We haven't stopped there. What we've done is we've pushed on more because we believe that the cybersecurity space needs to be regulated and its activities need to be regulated. So it would be good to have an authority that takes that space. And that's where from the 1st of October of this year, we've had the Cybersecurity Authority launch per the Cybersecurity Act 1038, which was basically established last year, in 2020. So the fact of the matter is, as the years have gone on, we've identified the importance of internet. We've identified the importance of using it for various things like education, for financial inclusion, for for different services in terms of things like your e-port and all that. And therefore, we believe that we decided that we need to secure all these digital infrastructure. In the moment, Ghana's, if you look at what's happened in the globe, where you find that there will be so many different kind of hits on different nations and critical infrastructure, like in the United States, not too long ago, we hear about the Colonial Pipeline, which was attacked by ransomware. When you look around, Ghana has been fortunate enough not to face these kind of disastrous attacks. But that hasn't stopped us from doing what we were to do best by securing our digital infrastructure. So what have we done? If you currently look at the Cybersecurity Authority, we have what is referred to as the Computer Emergency Response Team, which coordinates a response for any cyber attacks that come from internationally or within different spaces, within different sectors. We have what we refer to as the Child Online Protection, which protects our children from basically being exploited or being bullied by various actors. We've also provided protection for our critical information infrastructure and have a unit that does that, basically ensuring that critical information infrastructure like our banking system, our energy sector, and the lots are protected from any such cyber attacks. And then what we've also done is moved on to make sure that we develop a cybersecurity culture within the country. By that, I mean what we're trying to do is sensitize your everyday Ghanaian about the benefits of using the internet, but also the dangers of it. So let's take for instance, and I just want to use this as a simple example. When we started facing scams through mobile money, with regards to people sending text messages and say, and then calling you later to say that, I've sent you some money, the text message would have come through,
your PIN
please
number
refund that money and all that. The telcos, the police force, and other enforcement actors made sure that the public was sensitized in such a way that today, I doubt very much whether it's the same scam could beat anyone in Ghana, because people are now wise to it. And that's the same thing we want to be able to play within cybersecurity, to make people wise up to the different threats of cybersecurity and ensure that when they are attacked in one way or another, they would basically be able to know exactly that is a scam and know how to secure themselves against it.
It is true, Alex, that, I mean, today it's not easy to get somebody to actually heed to some of these scams, but that also does not erase the fact that a lot more people are online these days. They are very active online, and the question is, who are the people behind? The good thing about it is that you get to send messages, you get to do deals very easily and quicker if you compare to human beings involved going up and down. But the bad thing is that when something goes negative, you do not know who to hold responsible at what particular time. So as individuals, how do we protect our data?
Thank you very much, Aisha. I sit here with the hat of a data protection, and it's very interesting to listen to Alex talk about the strategies and the measures that as a nation we are putting together. The Data Protection Act is equally an act that has been put together not just to ensure organizations protect our data, but indeed to use it for the purposes. I think this is something that is missing when we talk about how safe or how secure our data. We tend to think about the technology side. Before cybersecurity evolved, we had physical security, we had people doing armed robbers, we had petty thefts, and that needed still to be protected. Now, data protection comes in when we hold to account organizations that have our data. So the telecoms, the banks, the churches, the institutions, the member associations, the radio stations, the TV stations, any organization that have our data that we are worried about. Now, it's right in the middle, because data protection have some basic principles that protect or ensure or go a long way into protecting our data. And security is one. It's an intersection between security and data protection. And data protection is wider than cybersecurity. So what I would say is that for data protection, or for individuals or citizens worried about how secure is my data, you need to think about why or how your data is out there in the first place. If you've given it for specific purposes, are they used for those intended purposes before we even think about it?
But how do you know?
One of the first things you have to know as a citizen, there are rights under the Data Protection Act. For example, you need to be informed about why your information is being collected before you even think about security. What is going to be used for? how long it's going to be kept for, and after that, what are they going to do with the data? And organizations have an obligation. This is enshrined in our Data Protection Act. I always carry one with me because it's important. Data Protection Act
843.
Act 843. And these are all enshrined, and it demands that organizations, before they even take your data to make it secure, follow these sets of principles or guidelines. But for citizens, we need to protect our data. One need to understand why you are giving that information. Is it required? Is it necessary? You really need to give that. Ask questions. That is how we can secure our information. If it doesn't need to be out there, then you don't have a problem about whether it is secure. So cybersecurity measures are to complement data protection as a whole. That is how I see it.
So the worry even is not so much about what kind of data is collected. For instance, if I'm going to buy or I'm registering for my Ghana card, the information I give out, SNIT and all those. Now let's talk about social media. So with social media, there's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the other,
LinkedIn.
Now you go there and these online sites ask you to fill in your data before you're allowed to do anything. So I put in my data. You ask me, sometimes they want to have access to your contacts, have access to these A, B, C, D. I give it to them. At what point do I know that my information is being compromised?
Okay. At the beginning, I talked about some requirements and obligations in the Data Protection Act. And this is not just Ghana Act, because Google's and Microsoft and you name it, they are not Ghanaian companies, although they may operate here. So there are global data protection laws that oversee and regulate them. Now, when we go to these social media sites, before you put your information, remember I said one of the rights is to be informed. They have a duty
to tell you.
To tell you why, what you're going to do with the information.
Okay.
And give you a choice, whether you want to proceed. I know a lot of us, when we registered with Facebook years back, we didn't even know our data will be shared.
And they don't even give you the opportunity to ask, what are you using this information for?
Actually, they give you the information, but we as citizens need to play our part.
Okay.
There's something called a privacy policy or a notice.
Definitely.
And we don't take time to read because it tends to be lengthy, it tends to be full of jargon, but this is why the data protection law is there.
Okay.
To make sure these providers make it clear, concise, and less full of jargon, so we can understand. So if we give our data and you want to be sure and ask whether it is secure, you have the right to just go to any provider and say, can you assure me as to how you protect my data? And that is a big right we as citizens or users of these platforms have that we don't use.
Oh, wow. So this is the bit that brings about what the state itself has to do to deal with this. And that's where I'm bringing in Alex. Alex, have we allocated enough resources to deal with this problem? I mean, what significantly have we done?
So I'm glad that Sylvia talked about the Data Protection Act. And if you look at the Ghana's journey, was basically when it comes to general, it was securing the information that we hold. We had the Electronic Transactions Act, which was basically enacted in 2008. And you see, if you take a look at that act, you could see that we already had started considering some of the issues related to the cybercrime and was basically cyber-related matters. So that act is very much cybercrime orientated. The Data Protection Act also looks at it from the data perspective, and I won't go too much on about it because Sylvia has already covered very comprehensively a lot about the act. The Cybersecurity Act is cybersecurity orientated, and what it does basically is it regulates the activities of the cyberspace. Okay. So, for instance, we talk about our critical information infrastructure, and in that space we have sectors like the health sector, the energy sector, the the financial sector and all that.
Yeah.
And what this act provides, and what Ghana also basically the nations provide is look, these sectors have an obligation to do certain things to ensure that Ghana's cyber infrastructure is secure. So these measures are make sure that certain obligations are put across to the people who are holding on to certain information that we consider very important to the individuals as well as the nation per se. Okay. So when we look at, for instance, where I talked about the the computer emergency response team. What it will do to ensure that our spaces were basically very, very secure is it coordinates information from all the different sectors who also have their own computer emergency response teams. When all the information is coordinated, then a response is looked at as to how we defend ourselves against any attacks or any threats that might be coming through. Also, within that same team, we provided what we could refer to as the cybersecurity incident reporting point of contact. And I believe I've shared that information with JoyNews earlier. So at some certain point in time, if you could put it up for the public to see, it would be great. But that platform provides the public a certain space to go to or somewhere to report their incidents when they suspect cyber crime issue is being something is happening related to cyber crime, or something that is related whether they've had attack on themselves as individuals. So there are certain, in terms of what we have got in place, and also I forgot to mention the fact that Ghana has also basically ensured that we are part of the Budapest Convention, which allows us to, if a crime is committed in Ghana, and the crime, knowing how cyber crime is a borderless crime, and the crime is committed, say, for instance, in Ukraine, we have a relationship with the right law enforcement agencies internationally to enable us to carry that process of solving the crime all the way to the end. Before, there used to be you investigate the crime, you file as international, you can't go any further. But now we've got the relationships in place because the Cybersecurity Authority has been able to establish those relationships so that we are able to carry our crimes and our criminal investigations or our cyber criminal investigations as far as we can and to ensure that the crime has been solved.
Right. So he mentioned, that there are a lot of things that is ongoing to ensure that we nip the cybercrime, because it's something that is living with us, which is not going. But you also made mention that as individuals, if we would pay attention to some of the privacy information that is given to us, then we will not make mistakes. What should be the watchword?
The watchword is ask questions. Why is the information being collected?
But who are you asking? If Facebook asks me to fill this, Google asks me fill this ABC, and they give me options, they don't give me that part where I can ask, why are you collecting this particular data?
Actually, when they give you that option, there's always a link. Okay. Say the privacy policy, click here. The challenge is we are in a hurry to subscribe to some of these things. We don't look at the link. It's always there. And I'm glad he's talked about regulation. The data protection law across the globe, the GDPR, the CCPA, POPI Act in South Africa, our own local data protection act, has an obligation for them to tell us. So if they don't tell us, and as a result, you have shared your information and it's been compromised, so it also provides for reporting breaches. So the cybersecurity set team records the breaches, but also the Data Protection Commission also has a register of breaches. So if you think an organization is using your information inappropriately, you complain to the organization first of all, and please do not look at the size of the organization. It takes the new GDPR that came into force, it was one person that made it happen.
Okay.
Because since information on Google's side were not correct, so it was then challenged. There's been other measures where single people have brought down the whole law. So don't think, who are you? In fact, the data about us, they need it more than we need their service. So if we start enforcing it and asking the right question, so Google is not bigger than you, because without you, Google doesn't exist. There are areas, inquiries, contact us. If you're not sure, go there and report. If you are in Ghana and you report something about, let's say, Facebook or Google and they don't respond, your next point of call is the Data Protection Commission.
Okay.
They are there to protect our privacy. And data protection includes cybersecurity. So if you complain to any organization, regardless of their size, and they don't respond, come back to your local Data Protection Act, which is our Data Protection Commission.
Has there been any challenge with enforcing this act? Has there been challenges over there?
I don't come from the commissions, but I think the biggest challenge in this country is the awareness. As with all laws, perhaps we don't take heed to it. Now, what my company, Information Governance Solutions, is doing is we've taken the approach of working with businesses to comply to the act. Okay. So, for example, we will assist a company register with the Data Protection Commission. We'll help them do a compliance assessment. We'll train their employees so that the awareness is built within the organization. Okay. They go out to the public, they share with family and friends, and the word spreads. So for us, that is our little bit we are doing. By training, we've also trained over 300 practitioners. Okay. Practitioners who understand how to implement data protection in Ghana, and we support them through our services. So that's what we are doing in a small corner to raise awareness. It is only by us citizens raising the awareness, challenging. There's 10 rights in the Act. Complain, compensation, to be informed, right to give and withdraw consent. By only us exercising that enforcement will move forward. Now, enforcement is not about fine, it's not about prisons. There are sanctions in the Act, but enforcement could be withdrawing a license for an organization to operate. This could be one person complaining. So we are very powerful as citizens to use our rights. That's what we should do.
I mean, I like that one, that we are very powerful as citizens. And she made mention of the fact that if you complain to Google, Facebook, and they do not respond, you can come back to your local. Alex, how do we do this? If I have a complaint and Google is not addressing my complaints, how do I get to the data protection? What's the process?
Either to your police force or report it to the Cybersecurity Authority. Okay. As I said, we have a line that you could contact straight away. Thank you for providing that information. And this is our point of contact. Anytime you think you've got an issue that is cyber related or anything regarding the information or anything that you believe is a cyber crime that's gone against you, use one of these media, because what we try to do is try to provide all the platforms that we know that people use. So there's WhatsApp, there's SMS that you could use, there's the phones that you could dial, the number being 292, both for the SMS and the phone calls, the numbers themselves. And there's also an app that we have, as well as there's an online reporting tool as well. So if people have any issues regarding to, for instance, you hear now and again, people keep on saying that, oh, I believe my Facebook account has been hacked. Just report it to us. We'll take care of the rest. Because what, as I said, is we, through the Cybersecurity Authority, we've established certain relationships with law enforcement agencies, as well as some of these providers, to be able to enable us to solve some of these crimes as quickly as we can as possible. It's sometimes not immediate, but it does get done.
Sylvia, you wanted to add to what to do when you have such problems?
If you have a data protection related inquiry, your first point of call is always the organization, but you go to the Data Protection Commission. It's a shame I haven't put aside, but if you Google Data Protection Commission Ghana, they have a phone number, you can reach out to them or through us. So that is where you go if your information is being used appropriately. It doesn't have to be a cyber crime only. Somebody sending you too many text messages, unsolicited messages. You're getting marketing material which you believe you haven't subscribed for, or you are getting people ring you for services you haven't asked for. These are some of the things. Or you no longer trade with a particular organization, and yet they are contacting you. Your complaint or your center point after the main organization, it's the Data Protection Commission. You can send them a text message, you can email, you can call, and they will deal with it. If you complain to an authority and they don't respond, what I'm going to say is keep a copy of your initial complaint. Okay. And then attach that and send it to the Data Protection Commission, and they will investigate it. I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. Sylvia Appiah is the CEO of Information Governance Solutions at the Data Protection Firm, and Alex Opong is also Head of Capacity Building and Awareness Creation at the Cybersecurity Authority. I'm grateful, ladies and gentlemen, for this conversation. Right now, let's cross over to Parliament as the debate on the budget LGBTQ bill rages on. My colleague Parker Wilson is there for us. He'll tell us more.
Tool that the proponents of the bill want to introduce, because this is an act that you engage in private, most likely, and you want to prevent young people in schools, in colleges, from thinking that it is fashionable to be part of it, and then they end up, deep in the practice where you think we should stop, but they would have already gotten deep into the practice. So one of the tools in the bill is to stop people from even wanting to identify as members of the community in whichever way. Then it adds prohibiting the conduct, it adds prohibiting the union. Given the position of the church that be compassionate, don't visit violence on people who identify, what's your position on this key tool that is being proposed? Because that's really the central issue before us.
Honorable Osler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lords, the ranking member and deputy ranking member, who are Catholics, have asked me to ask this question of you. So
take exception to that. We never ask you to ask any question.
So
we're asking the question as of right.
Me being a Presbyterian, I'm taking the liberty to ask on their behalf. My lords, from your paper, from your presentation, you indicated that sexual activity is seen to be ordered to procreation and a continuation of the human race, but you're celibate. So how are you helping us in that regard? That's the first question. My second question really is akin to what Honorable Ayariga asked. Your paper indicates that you're writing in support of the draft bill. Your conclusion says that you condemn homosexual acts, but that the rights of persons engaged or with those tendencies should be respected. The provisions in the bill that seek to impose criminal and punitive sanctions on people who engage in those acts. How do you reconcile the two? And I see that the provisions in the bill that also insist that they either recant or be punished. And I see that you're saying we should respect their acts, subject them to care and attention, assist them through, and even their families, through the difficulties and challenges that they're facing. So how do you reconcile those two positions? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other person apart from? No, I already disqualified the disappointed priest, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, my question is related to page 3 of the paper, item number 2, when the item number 2 seems to suggest that there is a mutual difference between somebody who has homosexual condition or tendency and somebody who engages in homosexual activities. I'm wondering whether this might not be an academic distinction, because to the ordinary Ghanaian, when they refer to you as this man is a homosexualist, they are saying that in fact he has been engaging in homosexual activities. Otherwise, how do you say he's a homosexualist? In other words, I say I'm a thief, but I don't steal. I'm a thief, but I don't steal. Who will appreciate that? What is the work of a thief? A thief is somebody who steals.
You are tempted.
So I'm wondering whether they can expatiate so that somebody can appreciate the context in this item number 2 on page 3.
Honorable Dominica, you'll be the last on this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Your Lordships, for the honor done the committee. When His Lordship Palmer Buckle was making the presentation, he talked about certain fundamental human rights that must be respected, including the right of homosexuals not to be discriminated against based upon certain suspect criteria. For instance, ethnicity, sex, and so on. And I wanted to know, I've read some literature regarding the U.S. Catholic Church taking the position that discrimination based upon sexual orientation is unconstitutional. And I wanted to know from you whether, when you mention sex, in the context of discrimination, in our Constitution, Article 17 is very clear that you cannot be discriminated against on the basis of sex. But sex is often, in that context, interpreted to mean gender. Would you consider, will you agree that sex in that context should be expanded, to include sexual orientation?
Milos, I think we'll take your responses now. After that, I will give you the opportunity.
Permit me to say that a bill has been brought to Parliament, and I think yours is to look at the bill and to see if there are excesses or flaws in it, point them out. But the generality of the bill is what we are pursuing. As to some of what we call the dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that is why you are lawmakers. So we are not going to debate what the bill is supposed to have presented. The generality of the bill, which we support very strongly, is that homosexual activity is intrinsically disordered. And therefore, if it is intrinsically disordered according to our Christian beliefs, our Islamic beliefs, our traditional religious beliefs, and so on and so forth, you, our lawmakers, whom we have voted there, you have a responsibility and a duty to fashion the bill in such a way that you answer our sovereign aspirations. And I think that is a basis that we and you should not run away from. It's very important. Having said that, I will most probably just, indulge in a few, answers. And the first one, for instance, is how can you protect the rights of a homosexual whereas you condemn the activity. I'll give you a very simple example from the scriptures. Jesus Christ and the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. They brought the woman before Jesus. And I tell you, one of the reasons why I would like to go to heaven is to ask Jesus whether a woman alone can commit adultery. And where were the men? I don't know. This is just for your entertainment. I like to go to heaven and ask God about that. But that aside, permit me to zero in on the fact that Jesus, we are told, said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." And he bent down and started writing. Another reason why I would like to go to heaven is to find out what he was writing. We don't know. We are conjecturing. But what is also interesting is when they left, and we are told they left one by one, beginning from the oldest to the youngest, because the older you are, the more sins you have. And so the old ones like me, they went away one by one. And Jesus was left alone with the woman. And he said, "Woman, has no one condemned you?" And I think those of you who deal in law and the rest, there was no prima facie case brought against the woman because there was nobody there to answer yes. He said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." So Jesus makes a clear distinction between what is the activity which is abominable and condemnable, and the person whose image and dignity must not in any way at all be rubbished, even in when a judgment is being pronounced on the person. This is just my contribution.
I like to take the case of celibacy and procreation. I think you are all aware that Jesus was celibate. And yet, his self-giving and total obedience to the Father was so perfect that he was able to reconcile us sinners, even while we were still sinners, to God. The celibate is not seen as one who is only not giving birth to children, but he's offering everything that he is and he has to God, preferentially to the poor and the needy. The three of us sitting here and many priests have raised children whose parents could not do that. And the simple reason is that we're offering our whole selves, the whole life to God. Because if I were to get married, I don't know where I would have found a woman who would accept that I leave her children, or even if you don't leave them, but to take so many children belonging to different people, different ethnic groups, different tribes, and raise them from primary school to university. You will have your own family descend on you. If you are working and having money, they will want to decide who within the family you should support and who not. So that is another value of celibacy. Apart from the fact that you learn to sympathize with a whole lot of people who are lonely and have nobody to love them. they find that at least when they go to a priest, is someone they can talk to without reservation. He can empathize with them and practically even help them. And so we are not producing our own children in terms of adding to population. But because we are alive and dedicated to God, that many people who would otherwise have died, especially children, are still alive. And not only alive, contributing tremendously to human population as well. So this is what I can say for now.
Thank you, my Lord. Honorable Sisi, you have a question?
I'd like to add something.
Sorry, hold on. My Lord, please go ahead.
Yeah. Somebody raised the issue of the tendency to be homosexual and then the act of being homosexual. Now, the tendency is different. You know, we all have the inclination, maybe the tendency to go and commit adultery. But that doesn't make you an adulterer until you commit the act. And so the fact that you are homosexual or you have that tendency doesn't mean that you have committed a sin. It's when you go out and do it, then you've committed the act. Then also there was the issue of the use of sex in our language, talking about human rights. So the right not be discriminated against on the basis of sex. Now this sex is, like as you said, gender, because you cannot discriminate against a woman because it's a woman. So if you do that, then you are discriminating against her on the basis of sex. And so homosexuals also have rights, the fundamental human rights. And so the right to life, right to education, right to shelter, and so on. All these are basic to all human beings, and they also enjoy that. But then, you know, when they say that they have the right to marry a man or a woman, so if you're a man, you cannot marry a man. That one is not a fundamental human right. It is not included in the definition of fundamental human rights.
Thank you. Hold on, Dominic. Honorable Sisi.
No. Okay. Can I, let me.
Hold on. Honorable Dominic, I'll come to you. Please follow up.
My Lord, I asked the question. I said, the bill goes beyond just prohibiting the act and says that you cannot even identify yourself as belonging to the LGBT community. Because the argument you make about LGBT members having fundamental human rights, that is if you even exist. You must exist in the face of the law to claim rights. But this bill is saying that you shouldn't even proclaim your existence as a member of any of the identities described as LGBT. And so if you keep insisting that, oh, LGBT has rights, it means that we should recognize them to exist, but when they engage in the act, we should punish them, or, like Jesus prescribed, we should find other ways of discouraging them from the act without necessarily throwing them into prison. And so we just wanted your take on that specific issue.
Permit me to say that I don't think we would like to defend somebody else's. We want to make our point. And that is why I said, and I beg you, that you are the lawmakers. That was my answer. You are the lawmakers. And therefore, if you are going to fashion a law that will come out completely against somebody else's fundamental human rights, I think it is our parliament that will be blamed. I'd like, however, to come out and say clearly, in all cultures, because of the sacredness or in which they held sex and sexual activity and sexuality, they always circumscribed it with very draconian laws. All cultures, you can go right through. All cultures have had cases where any form of aberration, sexual aberration, was punishable by death, by stoning, because of the danger that it posed to the greater good of humanity, not just of the individual. I will agree that some of the sanctions were draconian. But I like to believe that even capital punishment is only meant to deter, am I right? And that if a person should commit a crime that deserves even capital punishment, it is only the ultimate. In fact, that is another reason why the Catholic Church is now fighting against capital punishment. So I'll leave it at that. Lawmakers, please, there will be a lot of opinions expressed, and it is our hope and prayer that you would respect the sovereignty of this country and not allow the intrusion of anybody and any culture and any, body to hold us to ransom. It's a high time we stood on our feet and declared what we believe in. And that is why various opinions have been brought, pro and contra. Please listen to them as dispassionately. I cannot stand here, spend this little time you have given me to defend somebody else's, but generally, we are in favor of the fact that LGBTQ activities pose a greater challenge to our dear country, Ghana. And therefore, we think something has to be done to forestall what could become an irreversible situation like has happened in other cultures.
Honorable Sosu. Yeah, he says he has a concern.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Your Lordships, there are other groups that appeared before this committee and argued that criminalizing the act as it stands amounts to criminalizing sin. Because you are eminent religious leaders, would want to have your views on that position, that the proposal as it stands amounts to criminalizing sin. And my lords, the second one has to do with Romans chapter 1, verse 16, where the Bible says that, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to them that believe." And I'm quoting that scripture in respect of the testimony of one young man who claimed to be a homosexual until he met Christ. And then he changed, and he's now a straight and not a homosexual. And that the power to change persons who are homosexuals lies in the gospel than in criminal law. What do you have to say about that?
My Lord, I may want to ask this question in another way. And I want to find out if it will be all right for us as parliamentarians to conclude that these activities are immoral. God is not happy with this act, and therefore we leave it to the priests to deal with them without putting them to jail. Would we be right? Thank you.
We priests are not judges. We are pastors, and we will do whatever we can to convert such people so that the gospel of Christ will change them. But you are the lawyers, and so you decide on what should be done with them. you know, so division of labor.
Joe, we are getting into a certain realm. But I'd like to say, please, if you are interested in a theological discourse, we will be ready to come and give purely theological discourse. I hope you understand that. So that as to criminalizing sin, yes or no, we are entering into the realm of theology. We are entering into the realm not necessarily of legalities and the rest. And so I will beg us to stay out of that, because this, you are now raising us into a certain realm that we would need to give you a whole background. I think that is what our paper did. God created them. Male and female, he created. He had a purpose. He is the ultimate, and he is asking us to do, and therefore the consequences are. But we did not want to bore you with, theological momo jumbo. So that is why we sometimes have to respect your jurisdiction. I beg you, we want to respect your jurisdiction. We would not like you to forego the responsibility that is upon you. For to them that is more is given, more will be required.
My Lord, we are grateful. Dominic Aine, Honorable, you said you had a concern. You will be the last.
His Lordship, Archbishop Osebunsu, on the issue of sexual orientation, gave an answer that I wasn't very satisfied with. And that's because...
You don't need to be satisfied.
No. I think that the public hearings are very important for us. We have the task of passing a law. Interest groups, such as, the Catholic Church, are putting a position before us. We have to be persuaded, of that position, so that in our debates, we can be informed, because we are a deliberative body, by the positions that have been brought to us by the various interest groups. So I'm very keen about this issue, because I was happy that the position that the church has taken is the position that I hold. But on the issue, not because I'm a disappointed priest, but the chairman keeps referring to me without calling out my name. So, yes, but for instance, let's say there is a minor seminary in your diocese or archdiocese, and there is a homosexual mathematics teacher. He has not molested any of the students. He hasn't engaged in any homosexual activity on campus. He's not trying to convert students to homosexuality and so on. But then your rector fires him when he realizes that he's a homosexual. That is discrimination based upon sexual orientation. What will be your position on that?
Honorable Dominic Aine. Yeah. Probably you would want them to say black and white, that do this to them. And I'm not sure we are going to get that from the Honorable, the eminent men. I think that this has been answered. They have said emphatically that the position of the church is that the act is wrong, but we don't have to discriminate against them. And if you read the paper, that expression is mentioned like 3 times in the paper. And nevertheless, my lords, if you have something to add.
I just wanted to say more or less what you have said. With seminarians, it's a different thing than the example that you have given. If a mathematics teacher is doing his work well, and even if it is known that he's a homosexual, unless it is also found out that he is soliciting for homosexual practice among the seminarians he's teaching, I don't think it will be cause for dismissal. So that's just what I want to say. But if apart from the teaching the mathematics, he's also luring others into the homosexual practice, where in many cases, identifying with the group also means practicing. And that's why it is a very, very subtle thing. And I agree with Archbishop Buckle to say that when it comes to deviant human behavior, I think that you, the lawyers, are better trained to deal with measures that you can put in place to deter people from that than we. We always counsel and hope that they will they will reform. So thank you. That's what I wanted to add.
Right, sir. If you have some concluding remarks.
You need the virtue of neutrality. In other words, you have to listen to all parties. But protecting Ghanaians from a form of evil which is detested by all levels of our cultural values and Ghanaian values is also a great task that is given to you. If all the traditional people say we don't want this thing, the religious bodies, Islam, say we don't want this thing, the Christian denominations, various Christian denominations, we don't want this thing to come up in any scale that could destroy our upcoming youth. Because we also have to know that they are very vulnerable. People are going into our schools and saying all manner.
And you're watching their parliament where they are going through the memoranda that was submitted for the LGBTQI plus bill. This is something we're monitoring, and trust JoyNews will be bringing you more in our subsequent bulletins. And that'll be it for the polls this afternoon. Up next is Let's Talk Showbiz. But for more news, you need to log on to myjoyonline.com and you get updates of all the developing stories. So enjoy the rest of our programs.